Hi there. Today I want to show you a really easy printmaking project you can do at home with things you have around your house. And you can make some awesome prints. Let's get started. So what you need first of all is some cardboard. This is scraps from something that came, a magazine that came in the mail. And these are from a cardboard box. And I'm going to cut them up and make my Collograph base. All right, so I'm cutting out some shapes. And I'm going to take some glue. I'm using tacky glue, but any glue you have to glue cardboard, Elmer's glue, even a glue stick will work to glue it down, your pieces onto your, this is going to be my printing plate. And I cut out some other little strips here. I'm going to glue these down. If I was using a glue stick, I would rub a lot of glue on this and on both pieces, basically, because you want it to really stick. I'm going to move this down a little bit lower. It doesn't matter if you get a little glue on stuff, because you're going to be covering it up anyway, so. I'm making sort of a scene here of the moon. I'm thinking about this beautiful full moon that we're right in the middle of. The flower moon. I love that name. I thought that would be fun to think of that, but this is going to be sort of an abstracted version of that. Cover that up a little. Okay, now I'm going to just let that dry for a little bit. So now the next step is you need some aluminum foil. And you want a piece large enough to cover and wrap around your printing plate. So I'm going to try to get this, I'm going to move it down a little. And I'm just pushing all the way around, pressing around the edges of everything so I can see where the texture is, where my pieces are, and most importantly, where the edges of my printing plate are. Because I want to make sure, flip it over and fold this over all the way. Here. Fold it over all the way. And this, fold it over all the way. And lastly, that. Now I'm ready for the next step, which is I'm going to take some markers. I'm using you really want water-based markers because you're going to activate this whole thing with water. And or you could also use paint. I've done it. I'm going to do two versions so you can see. First, I'm going to do a marker version. So I'm going to just color in with my markers my moon, my shape here. So I'm doing something that's slightly realistic, but you could make an abstract design. You could do something super realistic. It's totally up to you. You don't have a lot of control with this type of printing, which is part of what's fun about it, I think. I'm just coloring in all over. I'm using a lot of my marker. I'm turning it on its side. But any kind of water-based markers would work for this. So the markers are your ink. Adding some different colors in here. See how this turns out. I do. So I've colored that all in. Now, a little bit more. My next step is paper. All right, so you've got your printing plate all colored in. Oops, I got a little blue where I don't want it. And what you're gonna do is just set that aside for a minute. And I'm gonna just wipe my table a little bit. Now I'm gonna take my paper, and I'm just using some paper I happen to have at home. I like rice paper and lightweight papers for printing. And I'm getting my sponge here pretty wet. And I'm just wiping my paper down. I want it to be wet all over, because that's going to be what makes your print work. You could also take a squirt bottle and squirt it. Now I'm going to bring my printing plate back in. And I'm going to lay the wet side carefully on top of my printing plate. Wet side down, and I'm going to hold it pretty still and rub. I like to do this with my hands. You could take the back of a wooden spoon and rub all over. I don't feel the need for more tools, but it's up to you how you want to do it. And I'm just gently rubbing and holding the paper so it doesn't wiggle around. And I can start to see where the ink is coming through. The ink from those markers, so that means it's working. I'm going to pull it off, and look at that, I have a print. Pretty nice, huh? It's kind of surprising how much marker ink transfers really well. So now I'm going to try another one. I'm going to do another print, but I'm going to use, instead of these markers, I'm going to use some paint that I have. And then you can see how differently that looks. So I am using some paint that I happen to have, which is gouache, which is an opaque watercolor, just because I happen to have it here next to me. But you could also use watercolors. You could use tempera or poster paint. Anything that you've got that's some kind of paint. Oops, that's more green. Give it a try. And I'm going to use similar colors here. Not exactly the same, but similar. So you can see how that looks. I need a bigger brush for this part. So just painting all over. And I haven't noticed, like, does the direction of your paint stroke show up on this? It doesn't look like it does, but we'll see. That's good. Just go around a little. Now, I'm going to move this out of the way and just clean this up a little so it doesn't get on my paper. And just get my paper really wet, and I'm going to set this out of the way too for the moment. Printmaking is so fun, and there's so many ways to do it, but you do have to be kind of tidy when you are getting ready to print. Okay, so now this is really wet. The wet side I'm going to put face down in the middle of my printing block, and I'm rubbing carefully all the way around, pressing it down so the paper doesn't move. And I can see the ink is starting to seep through the paper, or the paint rather, not ink. I think that's pretty good. And I'll pull it up and see how that looks. So that's really different. It creates a really different texture. I'm going to hold these two up so you can see the two different media I used and how that looks. The marker one and the one with, so this was done with washable markers, and then this one that's way more watery was done with my gouache or opaque watercolor paint. Really fun to play around with. I think you could have a lot of fun trying out different textures. It doesn't have to be all cardboard that you glue down to your printing plate. Trying different inks and paints and see what kind of effects you can get. So there you have it. Collograph printing with cardboard and aluminum foil.